In September 2025, a foul odor coming from an impounded Tesla in a Hollywood tow yard led to a discovery that would end a young man's rising music career and expose the death of a 14-year-old girl. The car belonged to a musician known as d4vd, a rising star with millions of fans. Inside, investigators found human remains, setting off a homicide investigation that would eventually reach a Los Angeles courtroom. What followed was a case that pulled back the curtain on fame, a hidden relationship, and questions about how something so devastating could unfold in plain sight. This is the story of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, what prosecutors say happened to her, and where the case stands today. Anthony Burke, known professionally as d4vd, rose to fame as a teenage musician, first gaining attention online before breaking through with his song Romantic Homicide, which became closely associated with the game Fortnite. By his late teens, he was performing at Coachella and appearing on Jimmy Kimmel Live, and he'd amassed a large, mostly young fan base that saw him as one of music's fastest-rising new stars. Streaming numbers climbed, tour dates sold out, and industry outlets frequently profiled him as an artist to watch. That trajectory changed dramatically in 2025, when his name became tied to a criminal investigation into a missing teenager, and the public image he'd built began to unravel. Celeste Rivas Hernandez was 14 years old at the time prosecutors say she died. She lived in Southern California and had been reported missing more than once, including in February 2024, with family members and local authorities searching for her over the following months. Her family has spoken publicly about her since her death, describing the pain of searching for her, the uncertainty of not knowing where she was, and later learning what had happened to her. As this case moves forward, it's worth remembering that at the center of it is a teenager whose life was cut short, not simply a headline or a court proceeding. Timeline Part 1, according to prosecutors, d4vd and Celeste first met in 2022 when she was 11 years old. Court filings allege a relationship developed between them over the following years, one that prosecutors say he worked to keep hidden from those around him. Celeste was reported missing multiple times starting in 2024, prompting searches by family and local law enforcement. In September 2025, her remains were discovered inside the front trunk of an impounded Tesla registered to d4vd, after the car had been abandoned in the Hollywood Hills and later towed. Investigators identified her through dental records, and the Los Angeles Police Department opened the case as a homicide investigation. Timeline Part 2, in early 2026, sealed court documents were briefly made public through a related legal matter, revealing that d4vd had been named the central target of a grand jury investigation into Celeste's death. He was arraigned in April 2026 on murder charges in a Los Angeles courtroom. A preliminary hearing followed in July 2026, lasting 5 days and featuring testimony from detectives, forensic experts, and text messages read into the record. At its conclusion, a judge ruled there was enough evidence for the case to proceed to trial. d4vd has not been convicted of any crime, and the case now moves toward that trial. The evidence prosecutors have pointed to several categories of evidence: digital communications between d4vd and Celeste, forensic findings from his home and vehicle, and testimony about items purchased in the months surrounding her death. The defense has signaled it may argue self-defense or point to Celeste's own messages as context for what happened. No witness has testified to directly seeing what occurred inside the home. As with any pending case, the full picture will be tested at trial. What's next as of now? d4vd faces trial on murder charges, and no verdict has been reached. Under the law, he remains presumed innocent until proven guilty. The case has drawn intense public attention because of his fame, Celeste's age, and the disturbing nature of how her remains were found. Legal experts expect pretrial motions and further hearings before a trial date is set. This is very much a story still being written in the courtroom, not a closed chapter. When a story gets loud, really loud, The kind of loud where everyone has a take and the comments never stop. Something quietly gets lost. And what gets lost is usually the person the story was supposed to be about in the first place. Here is something researchers who study media have documented over and over. The more famous the person accused of a crime, the less attention the victim receives. Not a little less, a lot less. The famous name fills the screen, the famous face fills the thumbnail, and the person who was actually harmed, they become a footnote in their own story. That is not an accident. That is how attention works when fame is involved. Think of it like a spotlight in a dark room. The spotlight is only so wide. When one person is standing in it, someone with millions of fans, a recognizable name, a long career, that light has no room left for anyone else. The victim stands just outside the edge of the beam, in the dark, even though they are the reason everyone is in the room. There is a word psychologists use for this. It is called the halo effect, but in reverse. When someone is famous, our brains have already built a whole picture of them. We feel like we know them. And that feeling, that fake familiarity, makes it harder for us to see clearly. We fill in gaps with what we want to believe rather than what the evidence actually shows. That is not a character flaw. That is just how human brains process information when emotions are involved. And this is why the legal process matters so much. A courtroom is built specifically to slow that down. Evidence is tested. Witnesses are questioned. A judge keeps the rules. It is slow on purpose because rushing to a conclusion based on what feels true is exactly how justice fails. So when a case like this heads to trial, the right instinct is not to decide early. The right instinct is to wait, to watch the process, and to keep asking one simple question. Whose story is actually being told here? Behind every headline is a real person, a family, a name, someone who deserves to be the center of the story, not the margin. Research consistently shows that the more famous the accused, the less airtime the victim receives, and that gap shapes what the public remembers long after the verdict. Most people, years later, can name the accused. Fewer can name the person who was harmed. That asymmetry is not neutral. It is a choice we make every time we click, every time we share, every time we decide whose name we say out loud.